What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with James Grande, and this is the DFS NBA live stream. One game out, but 7 games still to talk about when it comes to a DFS NBA slate. In case you haven't heard, no New Orleans or Dallas tonight. That game has been postponed. And James, it is still going to be a rockin' night for not only the FA staff and family alone when it comes to DFS NBA. I'm ready to dominate. What about you?
I'm ready to dominate, and I'm ready for I'm about to take a nap because you're about to list off all these injuries, and we're going to be here for a little while. Not just injuries, but COVID concerns as well. There's just a couple, Fancy. There's a couple injuries on tonight's slate, but outside of that, I'm ready to dominate as well.
Well, I'll make sure to be quick then so you don't take a snooze on me. So here, let's go over the injuries to start right now. No Russell Westbrook. We won't see him for a week. No Ben Simmons. No Tobias Harris. No half the Sixers, including Shake Milton, Seth Curry, and others. Tobias Harris being the big one, like I mentioned. 3 big questionables still. Colin Sexton with an ankle injury, but he healed with an ankle injury. Rashawn Holmes, game time decision with an ankle injury. No Kevin Love, no Alec Burks, no Evan Fournier for the Magic. Still no Darius Garland. Bogdan Bogdanovic, we're not going to see him for a little bit. No Michael Carter-Williams. Reggie Bullock. Cameron Payne is doubtful. Obi Toppin out. And James Ennis, who seemed to be originally ruled out, now questionable with an injury management tag. James. So we're going to go position by position. We're going to give some price points on FanDuel and DraftKings via the playbook, the DFS NBA playbook, which is live on fantasyalarm.com. So Jimmy Grande, you ready to start with some point guards tonight in the 7-gamer?
Oh, hell yeah. Let's go.
All right, let's talk top price guys that are in the playbook here on fantasyalarm.com. And when looking at James, who to spend up at that point guard spot, my eyes go to someone who I actually in the weekly rankings put as the cover this week, Mr. Super Slater himself, Malcolm Brogdon, taking on the Kings. And just because they wear the crown, I love to storm the crown and take it, especially with the opposition. Malcolm Brogdon in a great spot tonight, James.
Yeah, I'm actually thrilled that's where you started, because if you started Lillard or Trae Young, I was going to just go right to Malcolm Brogdon. I think that there's a clear advantage here for all the Pacers. I think the Pacers are arguably the top team in terms of DFS value today, and they're all priced pretty highly. Like we saw Sabonis over 9K, Oladipo 7. Like this Pacers team in a pace-up spot against the worst defensive unit, or one of the worst defensive units in basketball, is elite. And it's funny, Fensty, like when you see Malcolm Brogdon's ownership discrepancy from going from DraftKings to FanDuel. I think his ownership on DraftKings is kind of a leverage tonight, because I think people are scared off by that 8,300 price tag. But when you actually just like realize what Malcolm Brogdon has done lately, I mean, we're talking about one of the most consistent fantasy producers in basketball right now. We've seen multiple 50-point games out of him recently. It just feels almost too easy to plug him against De'Aaron Fox defense and whoever else they're going to throw in there. So give me Malcolm Brogdon over the likes of Lillard and Trae Young. Even though I like their spots are good in their own right. Malcolm Brogdon, give me the savings, give me the same upside, honestly, out of Brogdon for cheaper.
I have one question for you, and this is exactly why, because I felt like you were just calling me out just now when you said people seem to be turned off by the price tag. I was kind of one of those people when it came to the starting 5 today. I thought it was great, but then I said, wait a second. One thing stopped me. 2 things. The price tag, but then also, do you worry with this being a 5-game week for this team that they might stagger minutes thinking beyond this game? That's my one question to you, Grande. It was my question when I put Oladipo in the starting. It's with Brogdon. Dude, that's my one bugaboo with this entire Pacers week.
Malcolm Brogdon, even dating back to his days in Milwaukee, minutes I think have never really concerned me. He's kind of that guy, when he's on the floor, he can give you 40 minutes. And it's actually something John and I discussed on last night's podcast. He has played 39 plus minutes in 4 straight games. yes, Phoenix, there was an overtime game mixed in. There was 2 overtime games actually mixed in there. But a 41-minute non-overtime game against the Knicks, I mean, we're talking about a guy who, when he is playing, he is playing. And I don't think, yes, the 5 games are a slight concern. But as long as he's healthy, I think the Pacers are going to continue to deploy him. And no, it wasn't a shot directly at you. It was a shot at, I think, most of the industry and most of the people seeing his projection at only 3% ownership, because we're talking about a guy who's gone for 50 and 3 of 4 and is averaging 53 fantasy points over his last 4 games. So that's a slate at everyone not playing him tonight, and like saving on, going down and saying, oh, I can save on Oladipo. I can say, well, Oladipo hasn't shown 50-point upside like Brogdon has. So not a slate at you, but, since you offered yourself up, I mean,
Right. And you're between that kind of took my mindset away. That inceptioned me a little bit. But I'll also say this, and then we'll close out and move on. You got to remember with this Pacers team, it's different from last year. This year, you're really seeing a separation with who's taking shots and who's not. Right. And no matter who's in and who's out of that lineup, I mean, especially with Warren out, but Brogdon seems to be good to go with his huge spot. So that's something not to be deterred, even with the balloon price tag that we've seen in recent games, rightfully so. When it comes to paying up, should we go down to value or anyone else that you like? Do we skip right over Lillard and Trey?
Yeah, I think you can avoid them tonight. I think there are better spends on the slate. And I think at the rest of the point guard, I mean, the clear-cut chalk, as you will be LaMelo Ball in GPPs tonight. And I think it's warranted, like 30-plus minutes. I mean, we saw 30 minutes last game in a competitive game, and that's been what we've been hoping for in competitive, atmosphere. Will LaMelo be on the floor? Well, he was too good to take off the floor. And if he's going to be this good, we knew the peripherals were going to be there. If he's going to be this good offensively, I mean, he's a game changer, and we've seen that. Charlotte's won 3 in a row. So I love LaMelo. I know the Knicks defense has been good, but there will be times where he's matched up against Elfrid Payton. And that's the deficient part of the Knicks defense is Elfrid Payton. So I'm perfectly fine with using LaMelo in tournaments. And honestly, I'll go as far as saying cash games too, because he's been that good.
And let's talk about the Charlotte team. Their front court offense is virtually non-existent. I hate to say it. It's not there. They are relying on 4 players, 3 of them being guards, to score most of their points, right? Do you agree with me or do you disagree?
I agree. And then we'll get like the random Bridges or random Washington 20-point outings. So for the most part, I agree. And then like we'll throw in like twice a week, Bridges gives you 20, and twice a week, PJ Washington gives you like 18 to 20 actual points as well.
Now, James, moving on to shooting guard, I've got a question for you because like I mentioned, no Russell Westbrook. So going up against Phoenix, I know he's 10-1 and 9-9, but I got just one question for you, Mr. Grande. Beal or no Beal?
So I'll be the banker here in this deal or no deal segment. I'm going Bradley Beal, and I don't think the price tag deters me from using him, and I hope it deters everyone else because we're talking about a guy who has 101 actual points over his last 2 games. Actual points, not fantasy. Like, he is scoring better than anyone in the league right now. And we're talking about a guy without Russell Westbrook and Thomas Bryant on the floor who, are both out. Bryant for the year has a 40% usage rate. Like, those are numbers that we were playing James Harden every single night. We were saying James Harden, 40% usage rate, no Russell Westbrook, no Chris Paul over the last couple of years, plug and play. Well, now we're getting Bradley Beal, same situation, worse team around him than Harden had in the past, for cheaper than Harden was. Harden was $12K, $13K last year at times when he was playing alone. So, yes, it's a pace down spot. Phoenix is a good defensive team. I get all that. That hasn't mattered. Boston was a good defensive team, and that didn't really deter Bradley Beal from doing what he did. So, Philly, by the way, good defensive team. He scored 60 on them. So, yes, I will be eating the Brad Beal price tag tonight in all formats. I think there's 50 actual point upside here.
And you're right about that. And let me put it to you like this. When I was doing these shooting guards for the weekly rankings, I was thinking Oladipo's got 5 games, so he's got the super slate, so he gets a bump. But does he really beat Bradley Beal, who still has a full slate? And I said no. I kept Beal ahead of him, and that's because of what you just mentioned, Grande. Who else in this offense at this point is coming through with no Westbrook on the floor? Who else? This is audition time. Really is. We're going to get to something I like about that a little bit later, speaking of the Wizards. But for now, sticking to shooting guard, is there anyone else that you like paying up for, or is it time to dip into the value pool a little bit and we're getting a little saucy tonight potentially?
So I think CJ McCollum has been elite. I don't love paying $8,800 for McCollum, but there's no doubt that what he's doing warrants that price tag. I mean, we saw 51 fantasy points, 37 actual in 29 minutes. So really good spot against a Toronto team on a back-to-back. I think Devin Booker, someone John has been touting, someone that we've discussed extensively on the podcast this year, where he's just been too expensive. And 7,900 against the Wizards feels right for a lot of reasons. One, the Wizards are the fastest team in the NBA in terms of pace. Phoenix is 29th. So we're getting a lot of extra possessions here potentially for Phoenix. Obviously, that means a lot for one of the best all-around scorers in the NBA. And we're starting to see more from Devin Booker. I mean, we've seen 240 fantasy point games over his last 4, and, that exceeds 5x value here at this price tag. So I think there is a ceiling game on the horizon tonight for Devin Booker, and I think that could be the case. And I like Victor Oladipo quite a bit. I mentioned it when we were talking about Malcolm Brogdon. Indiana is just plays galore tonight in Indiana because they're going up against the Kings. So the Kings are they are now officially the worst defensive rated team in the NBA. So give me Oladipo under 7K. He just hasn't been making shots, but all the peripheral stats are there. 6 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and over a steal per game. If some of the shots fall, I mean, he's taking 17 plus shots every single game. If they begin to fall, we're talking about 50-point upside. So I love Oladipo at the top. So I don't know if I'll be getting saucy tonight, Fancy, because there is some elite value in Philly.
Stole my thunder again.
In Philly.
They are stealing my thunder. You steal my greeting when you got on the stream before we began. You steal everything from me. Go for it. You already stole it.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go sit in the corner, Fancy.
It's okay. Talk about how great of values Tyrese Maxey and Danny Green are, Grande, because Green hit my start in 5, and Maxey, still, who else is there to play in Philly? Everybody else is COVID, and Ben Simmons is hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to ignore a guy who took 33 shots and played 44 minutes in regulation. The other day, he went for 60 fantasy points in Tyrese Maxey. Little discrepancy in terms of positions. He's point guard only on DraftKings, shooting guard only on FanDuel. So you'll have to, depending on where you're playing them, you'll have to, vary your rankings and your positions. But I love Maxey. I don't think I'm alone in that take either. I think he's going to be very popular. But there's a bunch of guys. Danny Green, you mentioned, he took 17 shots and played 36 minutes. That's not the typical Danny Green outing you'd expect. But even with Joel Embiid back, there's going to be plenty of shots to go around.
You want to know what I said, Grande? If I can cut you off, because I said this in the starting 5. I said I actually think it's more beneficial for someone like Danny Green with Joel Embiid in, because the assists now, I feel a lot better about assists. And not only that, but with Embiid, who's going to be getting doubled all night, and Embiid's someone that plays in the elbow and the arc, Danny Green's going to be open at the arc. Whether or not the shots fall, that's a different story. But the assist, and I hate upside, but I'll say it, the assist upside is there for him tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And I do love the fact that you talked about, because last night on the podcast, I said there's no reason Philly doesn't just give Joel Embiid multiple touches every single possession down the floor.
They have no one else.
Every time down the floor, he needs to touch the ball. And that's only going to draw double teams. And Danny Green is a good shooter. Whether we crapped on him for his poor postseason performance, I mean, his MO his whole career has been his ability to shoot. So I think Danny Green, Isaiah Joe played 44 minutes.
Right.
He's in play. They only have 4 wing players available, and then Dakota Mathias, or you're going to pronunciate it differently because you're the pronunciation god. Also played 41 minutes, and he's 3,900. So I think just pick and choose who you want. I think a popular approach tonight is 3 Philly guys. I'm locking in Loden and Embiid, and I think 2 of these value guys is a very strong approach because you can fit a Bradley Beal into your lineup. You can fit Malcolm Brogdon along with Embiid. So I think 2 of these value guys for Philly is a really solid approach tonight.
Well, if you do go 3, if you do go Embiid and the 2 value guys, I mean, do you really try to play with fire a little bit, or do you just go with the easy road and go with Maxey and Green as the value guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the chalk like trio.
Right.
But again, they just don't have the able bodies that Joe and Mathias won't play 30 plus minutes. And at 4-1 and 3-9, like there's tremendous value there. Like you're saving money off Maxey and Green, only $600 and $800 respectively, but that $600, $800 could get you up to a Bradley Beal or get you up to Giannis if you want to play him. So there are different routes to take. I think Maxey Green is the chalk value on Philly, and I think Joe and Mathias are the guys that go under-owned but are still good values in their own right.
So maybe in GPPs you go 1-1.
Correct. I think that's a good approach. I do think that's a good approach.
Now let's talk about the other side of that matchup, because with value and with lack of players comes opportunity on the Atlanta side, because there's a big old smile on my face. Not that Bogdanovich is hurt, but I am a huge DeAndre Hunter guy. And I was so pissed off when they got Gallinari and when they got Bogdanovich that Hunter was going to be riding the pine. And now both are hurt. Gallinari's been hurt. Bogdanovich just got hurt. Hunter now, even though his price point is in the 6s, this is a guy that's going to play deep into the game. He doesn't have as many players taking minutes from him. He's got the 3 not virtually to himself. He shares it with Reddish. It's a great spot, and even if it's 6K range, he's not just a scorer. He'll help out in other areas, Grande.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect transition over to small forward too, because I think
see what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think Hunter is a really strong play. I don't know why DraftKings and FanDuel have been slow to the punch here and like raising his price, because he's been crushing value every night. 0.97 fantasy points per minute when Gallinari and Bogdan are off the floor, and he's starting still. He even shifts to the 4 when they decide to move Collins for his like 10 minutes a game at center. So like there's a tremendous value in Hunter. The Hawks obviously see it, and yeah, I think the price point's still too cheap. Shout out to John, who has played DeAndre Hunter every single night for the last like week, along with you, Fensty, and he keeps telling me to play him, and I keep playing Kevin Huerter. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to you guys.
You're great. You're just amazing. Just never change. Promise me you'll never change.
Never.
I mean, looking at the small forwards quickly, anyone else you like? I mean, Chris Middleton's in an interesting spot. Orlando in a situation because they're still dealing with injuries. So, I mean, no Fournier in this one. I almost wonder if it's better if Fournier plays for the opposition that he's facing, you know?
Yeah, I think so too. Middleton's okay. I think you get your exposure in tournaments. I think Gordon Hayward's fine for tournaments.
Right.
I love Mikal Bridges. I've been a Mikal Bridges truther.
You want to know why the Suns? You want to know why the Suns' defense has been one of the strongest in the league? That guy.
Yeah,
that guy.
No, I tried telling everyone this, that he's an elite defender who is also coming around offensively. And I think Mikal Bridges 60. I was playing him at 6,100 earlier in the year. I don't think people should be scared off by his price, but I do think a pivot on the same team. We talked about it when it's Devin Booker, another guy that I've been really high on since coming out of college because he's a great shooter. I'm talking about like perfect form. We even saw this like smooth behind the back step back the other day, which he's developing. Cam Johnson, who the minutes are on the rise, 27 and 29 minutes the last 2 games. The fantasy production's on the rise, 23, 26, 28. the last 3, and he's still 4,200 Fensty. He's playing Washington. We talked about the pace-up spot. So I think both Phoenix small forwards tonight are elite plays at the price. I think Cam Johnson makes more of my lineups because of a price play, but I think Bridges, coming off his career high in actual points, is firmly in play himself.
And I'll add the cherry on top of that amazing Sunday that you just put out in regards to the situation, Grande, and that's Cam Johnson can also flex up to the power forward spot. And that's huge right there. So you start to think to yourself, okay, are we splitting hairs with Bridges and Johnson? First of all, Bridges isn't splitting hairs with anyone. He has to stay in this game for this to work. Who's it going to be? Devin Booker? It's not going to be Devin Booker. This guy's got to make up for what Devin Booker lacks defensively. But Johnson will help out at the 4, and the Jay Crowder kind of guys. Those guys are in trouble with Johnson, who's on the rise. And something else I was reading out of the Phoenix local papers, too, is out of Arizona. I was also reading just how much they love this guy, too. So when you read consistently how much, especially going from that season to this, now great price point, Grande. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like him. And Fancy, don't worry, they're not taking him off the floor. They see what we see clearly. Chris Paul sees it. Devin Booker sees it. It's clear that Mikal Bridges has a very bright future with this Phoenix team.
All right, so let's talk about the front court for a few minutes here. Let's start with going up against Charlotte, because Charlotte virtually has no front court. It's Bismack Biyombo, PJ Washington, and that's about it. So I have to ask you about not only Randall, but Mitchell Robinson, because when making the starting 5, I was just like, I can't use Mitchell Robinson yet. I don't have, even though this is a great spot for him, even in GPPs, I just don't trust him, man. I don't. And then, of course, you trust Randall, who's been getting it done. But now the price point, man, 94, 96, man. What are you doing going up against Charlotte?
So I'm definitely not playing Mitchell Robinson. I think I'm out on him for right now. We're starting to see the blocks, so I could see the case on FanDuel where we get more points for blocks. But I think Randall's price point makes an intriguing GPP play because I think people are going to shy away from it. But there's triple-double upside, and he's showing it every single night that they're even in blowouts, Thibodeau's going to play him. He's going to keep him on the floor. He's going to be a threat. I mean, he had like 4 and 4 with no points in the first quarter last night and ends up with 29, 10, and 5. So I'm perfectly fine with Julius Randle. I think a lot of people go to Sabonis because Sabonis is coming off a career game himself, 28-22. I think a lot of people are deciding whether they want to play Giannis, and I think Giannis is in an elite spot himself against the Magic. So I think Randall kind of falls by the wayside, and we've seen 63 times from him this year. So there still remains upside at this $9,600 price tag.
Other guys that we could talk about here going down to the value spots. What about Aaron Gordon going up against Milwaukee? Because, Giannis being there on the other side is concerning, but with Giannis, do you think he's going to have to maybe pay a little bit more attention to Mr. Vucevic?
Yes. And I think what makes Gordon interesting is that if you're going to play Giannis, you're going to want to play someone from Orlando because I think this game shoots out. So I think Aaron Gordon makes perfect sense considering we saw his minutes back up to 36. He's significantly cheaper than Vucevic, and we're talking about paying up for Giannis, Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid will get. So I think Aaron Gordon makes perfect sense for tournaments, considering the minutes are there, considering this game. What do we have in Vegas? It's up to 10, so that's a little worrisome. But, for tournaments, if the Magic can keep this close, Aaron Gordon's obviously a key component as to why.
66, 67. You mentioned Embiid, and we shouldn't have to talk about why Embiid anymore. Look at who else is there. So that's obvious. But if you do want to be a little bit different, who else can we look at that center spot? You've got Drummond, who's out there as well at a high price. When it comes to, on the other side, Capella, I like John Collins a little bit better than Capella. What are your thoughts on that?
So in terms of Drummond, and I think what's been lacking in the past is he shoots 10, 11 times a game. We know the rebounds are going to be there. He's very good in the blocks and steals department. He always has been. He's a pretty good passer too. He spends a lot of time catching passes in the high post and kicking. Fancy 20 and 23 shots the last 2 games for Andre Drummond. If he's going to shoot 20 plus times, we're talking about a guy who has 50 plus upside every single night. That's what we want. And if I don't think we have Colin Sexton news yet.
No, we don't. I keep checking.
So we don't have Colin Sexton news yet. If he doesn't play, and if the whole Sexland is out for this game, Drummond is going to shoot another 20 times a game. And that's appealing because we saw he really came on in that second and third quarter against Milwaukee and brought them back into that game because of his offense, not his offense, which is not something we mentioned with Drummond. So I really like him. I like Embiid more, but I think this could be a night if you want to be different. You could play 2 centers, something we don't really talk about a lot. I don't necessarily think I'm going to go to this Collins Capella front court. I just think, or I don't know.
You want to know what my thought process is on it? I think because Capella is very tough to defend inside, I think Embiid's going to have to stay in the low post, and I think Collins is going to be open for a lot of the game at that elbow.
Well, I guess, who is Philly going to start at power forward? Are they going to start Paul Reed? Are they going to start Mike Scott? Do they start Tony Bradley? There's an obvious mismatch for Collins at power forward going up against Philly. So I completely understand. And it's something that John alluded to on the podcast last night. He was crushing, Collins was, early in that game, and then literally against Charlotte, and then literally did nothing for the final 3 quarters. He needs to be more assertive. He doesn't need to talk crap about Trae Young running the offense.
My God,
he needs to be more assertive himself. So I like Collins more than Capella, and I think what you said is correct. But I don't want to spend $7,400 on Collins on a slate like this, where I feel like there are a lot of guys that I want to spend up on. There are a lot of guys that are slightly cheaper than him that I prefer, like LaMelo, like Vic Oladipo. So I won't find myself playing a lot of Collins tonight. It's a tournament play only for me. You
know who else you don't like? Because we were going back and forth a little bit about it on Twitter earlier. You don't like my DeAndre Ayton play. And look, I get it, man. He's not. And Sean Mitchell said the same thing on Twitter. We go back and forth on Twitter every day, all day on plays. That's what we do because it's fun and we want to keep you guys informed with what's going through our mind throughout the day. That's why we do it. But here's the thing with Ayton. Washington right now, to me, when you go into experimental mode, to me, where they maybe try a few different lineups, I think Ayton being the constant there, I just think that this is going to be more of a Ayton low post, able to grab rebounds over who's ever guarding him type of night until 2 things happen. Number 1, Mo Wagner gets his feet in the water a little bit more, gets a little bit more comfortable out there with the extended run. And number 2, Robin Lopez doesn't play like a big wussy, okay? Those are 2 things.
I don't disagree. There's tremendous rebounding upside here. We've seen Ayton with a 16-board game already this year, and Washington's 24th in rebounding percentage on the year. So I'm not disputing that fact. I think there's legitimate 20 rebound upside. I'll get that out of the way. But the shot attempts are concerning for me. And I think on a slate where there are a lot of high usage guys, when we're considering guys for our DFS lineups, we want to use those high ceiling, high usage players. And as good as Ayton is and as crafty as he is offensively, he's not showing that. And I don't know if that's because of all the weapons around him, the emergence of Mikal Bridges, the addition of Chris Paul, the emergence of Cam Johnson off the bench taking a lot of shots. I don't need to mention that Devin Booker's their lead guy. So I don't know if he's trying to figure out where he fits in. Because he is way better than this, and he's way more skilled offensively than he's showing. That's my concern. It's not the skill or the player, and the potential. It's what he's doing and where he fits right now in this offense, and that's where my reserves are with DeAndre Ayton.
I will say this about DeAndre Ayton. To me, and Grande, I've been telling you this for a year now. I think he's more of a power forward. You put someone who's maybe 6'10", 6'11", someone let's just say a Clint Capella with him on his side, you will see Ayton do what power forwards tend to do on the elbow. You see it now, but I think you're right that where is he going to play tonight? Is he going to play in the low block where he should be playing most nights? Or is he going to be playing the high post setting screens and popping out to the other elbow for shots? That's something that we are going to have to see, James. But as always, man, you got anything else to say? You got the breaking news on your face.
No, I was just saying they kind of got that guy in Phoenix, Jalen Smith. I know he was one of your darling draft picks.
He was.
Once he returns from injury and works his way into the rotation, I think that's your immediate fix. The bandage is already there in the form of Jalen Smith.
Hey, man, I was down to start both of them with the analysis I was given on the site. So he's James Grande. You can give him a follow at _real_Grande. You can give me a follow at Fensty Sports. Make sure you go to the site. We still have time before a lock. We've got everyone in chat ready for you. Let's all dominate together to start the week. It's the DFS NBA live stream here on fantasyalarm.com. Let's win it.